Hi, Mike Brindley, auctioneer, discussing again auctioneers and the law. I think we called this part 3. And something I see frequently as an expert witness as I travel across the United States are auctioneer terms, conditions, whether they be for bidders and buyers and or with sellers, that conflict, uh, strictly conflict with state law or federal law. And the one I see the most, although there are several that are pretty frequently used around the United States, the most common one I've run across is that bidders, when they register for an auction, they are not permitted to retract their bid. They can't retract their bid. Once they make a bid, they can't retract it. Sorry, can't retract your bid. Well, my cat stepped on the, no, I'm sorry. My 9-year-old, no. I changed my mind. No, I didn't understand. No, 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 no. You can't retract your bid. Once your bid's made, it's over. It's done. I see that frequently. I also know in those states, 49 states, I think this would hold up probably in Louisiana as well, just might as well say 50 states, have law. 49 states certainly have law that says the bidders can retract their bid. They can retract their bid. Before you say sold, they can retract their bid. And you know what's reasonable or fair about or equitable about that type of situation is, if I'm in contract for $5,000 with your seller as a bidder, I'm on at $5,000, you're asking $5,500, and I retract my bid, and you say, well, wait a minute, you can't do that. And 2 seconds later, you find $5,500 and take me out of the contract on your side, but I can't get out on my side. In other words, we have a contract for $5,000. You can take a higher bid and void the contract, but I have no way of voiding the contract. Now let's review those terms I was using earlier: fair, equitable, reasonable. I would think not. And contracts, agreements, terms, conditions, while they don't have to be on their face fair or reasonable, when you get into court, when you get into a judge, judges and juries frequently look at terms, conditions, contracts through the lens of, is this fair? Is this reasonable? Is this equitable? And I can tell you, in cases that I've been involved in, where a bidder desired, and made known quite plainly that he wanted to retract his bid on an online platform, wouldn't let him retract his bid. He sent an email saying, I want to retract my bid. I'm not going to perform. I want out. I'm done. I'm not bidding. I bid, but I've changed my mind. And they sold the item to him and then went after him for performance. We argued in court that he had a right to retract his bid, and I argued on the witness stand that it was reasonable. The judge even asked me. He said, Mike, what do you find unreasonable about him not being able to retract his bid? And I said, well, what I find unreasonable is he can't retract his bid, but the auctioneer can take a higher bid. And he said, well, and I said, well, we've got a contract here where one party can get out of the contract unilaterally, but the other party can't get out at all. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's reasonable. I don't think that's equitable. He said, understood. So where would you rather be? We could argue about whether your terms can be counter to law, and whether another point that's often made is if you do hold people to terms which are counter to state law, have you given them any consideration for that change? And I can tell you that I don't know an auctioneer that's given anything to the bidder to pay for him giving up the right, in our example, of retracting his bid. But there's a legal theory that possibly enough consideration would be paid to the bidder in our example. I'm going to give you this or give you that, but now you have to give up your right to retract your bid. But that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So there's no counter consideration there to make that. Well, what I just said it. I'm going to say it again. What does the consideration argument beg as far as a conclusion? It begs that, well, we make it more equitable, fair, reasonable, and then he can give up that right. But see, we don't do that either. So can your terms and conditions, can your contract be counter or not compliant with state law or federal law? I would offer, as our title to this part 3 here, I would offer that's a bad place to be. It's a bad place to be. If we've got state law, it's there for a reason. Legislature wrote it, or the drafters of the Uniform Commercial Code wrote it, and state law has adopted it. The courts have looked at it. If your contract's not compliant with state law or federal law, or your terms and conditions contract essentially is not compliant with state or federal law, actually, the worst possible place to be would be for a judge or jury to say, I find since your contract's counter to law, we're going to say the contract or the terms and conditions are void. And so this gentleman that wanted to retract his bid, there was no prohibition from him retracting his bid because your terms and conditions don't apply here. They've just been voided. I don't think that's where any auctioneer wants to be. At least I would offer that's not where any auctioneer wants to be. Mike Brantley, Auctioneer. Pleasure to be with you today. Other videos on this same page, others forthcoming. Have a great day and stay safe.